Hello, and welcome everybody. This is a highly anticipated event that I've been planning for quite some time with my good friend David Rush. And today we're going to be talking about virtual staff mastery, winning in a cloud-based world. And this is a super exciting topic. There's no one better to shed some light on this one. And Mr. David Rush, how are you today?
Good. This is like years in the making, right?
Yeah, right. Of course. Yeah.
Whether it was conscious or unconscious.
Right. So Dave and I used to work together previously, in the office. So we had a lot of fun building some stuff for a previous company. And we kind of went our separate ways and had the great pleasure of reconnecting again not too long ago. So Dave, pleasure to be back here with you.
Yeah, I'm excited for the conversation. And it's funny how we're now both chief operating officers and operating in worlds with similar overlaps. And it was fun to reconnect.
Time flies, But yeah, you've been up to some really cool and exciting things. And I think, like I said, there's no one better to speak on this topic in the world of virtual staffing and, virtual assistants, BPO, whatever those buzzwords are that you hear out there, fractional employees and managers and all those types of people. So Dave, what have you been up to? And let's talk a little bit about, why virtual staffing is a huge win for businesses these days.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been passionate about helping small business owners, entrepreneurs. I know the challenges that we all face in terms of doing things more efficiently, effectively, and being able to operate, I think, in our zones of genius, so we don't have to do a lot of the stuff that we don't love or don't enjoy doing. So I first started off using virtual assistants years ago, probably over 10 years ago, that I had my first virtual assistant. I said, man, this is a game changer if you know how to use it well. And, Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time, just went across my mind as you were introducing. And I said, that's a book that, tells us, how do we buy back our time? How do we do the things we want to do and then find great people to do the other things,
Right. 100%. And let's actually take it down to the bottom, to the core. I'm sure everybody's heard these terms, but maybe not everybody. What is a virtual assistant? When you say that, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's a good clarification, because sometimes now people think, oh, it's AI. It's like an AI.
Yeah, right.
When I say it, what I mean is outsourced talent. So in our case, we focus a lot on the talent in the Philippines. So people in the Philippines who can work remotely and do all kinds of admin and other specialties, everything from managing emails and inboxes and calendars to social media management to highly technical skills, whether it's accounting or legal, or even we've got somebody who's good with commercial landscape design of all things. And we've got a person in the Philippines who's now helping a pretty sizable company here in South Florida.
That's amazing. So basically it's somebody who's outside of the region that you're in. It doesn't need to be the United States, but it's basically outside of your region that's working virtually and is doing job tasks and functions and roles to support your business, right? Is that pretty much what we're looking at here?
Yeah, we often say it's not to replace talent. It's really to enhance the talent that you already have inside of your business in one way or another. It's so that the people that you hire to do highly specified roles can alleviate some of the bottlenecks of their time to really focus on the higher level stuff and have the administrative components of the business easily handled, because you're not paying them, the big bucks to do $5 to $10 an hour work that can be done by somebody else.
What's crazy is I've actually worked, with a couple VA teams and myself, and through the lens of CallTools, we work with hundreds, if not thousands, of companies that employ VA talent and VA teams. But sometimes you'll even find that these individuals are highly skilled, even more so than somebody that you might hire, that's local, that could drive to your office, and I've seen that time and time again.
It's like an unfortunate reality of, I think, the times that we're in. And I think COVID had an impact. I think just maybe U.S. complacency in some ways. The work ethic in some cases has diminished. And sometimes you can find more highly motivated, more skilled sometimes talent in other locations. And we've had some clients who said, man, I kind of want to replace some of my people because I didn't realize the level at which people could work, operate, and how efficient and effective they can be. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so cool to see, you know, it's really become like a global, you know, environment, right? Like you could find the best talent from anywhere in the world, right from where you are, and, you know, go through those interviews, go through that process, and people do an incredible job, you know. So I think what's important when we're talking about virtual, you know, and winning in a cloud-based world, you know, the topic of our event here, it's the people that you find, the quality of the talent, and then also the technology that you're using, you know, because it's a very different, you know, situation when you can't see somebody in front of you at a desk, at an office all day. And what are the things that you're using to, you know, not only see if they're doing their job and doing it consistently, but if they're excelling at it, right? So is this something you come across a lot, Dave? And, you know, what are some things that you've seen that work really well, you know, in managing these teams?
I think that some of the challenge is how to, what I find with a lot of leaders or our clients, whether it's solopreneur or small businesses, is how to put any kind of talent, and in this case, we're saying virtual talent, in a great track that allows them to excel and allows them to have the impact you want on your business. And some of the challenges of leaders, especially if it's the first time, delegating, building SOPs, standard operating procedures or playbooks that are effective, and then effectively putting somebody inside of that system often becomes a challenge. So to set ourselves and our businesses up for success, a lot of times if I'm doing it all myself, I know how to do it, but can I translate that knowledge, that process, that system to another? That's a whole other story and skill set. And when you're good at that, then when you bring somebody in with the talent, they can spin the wheel that you've already created a lot faster because it's clear what needs to be done.
For sure. So having a very clear framework, right, that they can follow step by step in black and white. It's almost like you're becoming a teacher, right? You're teaching and training these incredible, you know, staff members to do the role, and having the ability to track and measure, you know, what they're doing over time. I find the KPIs to be super important. I know with a lot of the teams that we work with that are handling inbound and outbound phone calls at CallTools, right, they'll use our reporting to find active time on the system. How much time did this, you know, agent spend in a campaign trying to make phone calls, trying to connect, and then how much time did they spend on the phone? How many calls did they make? You know, and all those different things to make sure that they're actually doing their job. As well as the win markers too, like the KPIs, how many appointments did they set? How many sales did they make, right? To really see if this person is working out and doing what they need to be doing.
Yeah, and we use a system called Time Doctor for a lot of our monitoring, where they log in. It's tracking number of hours worked while they're in that session, but it's also taking screenshots. And so if we needed to inspect some of the actual work being done, we can dig a little deeper in terms of the diagnostic. But I also recommend, especially early on, because you want to, as a leader, we want to manage the integrity of work sometimes. And so I'll say at the end of the day, have the person send a report of what they accomplished for the day. And sometimes as leaders, we need to inspect early on to make sure things are being done the way we expect them being done, and as effectively as we know they can be being done. Because I'll find somebody's taking a half hour to do something that I know personally I could do in 5 or 10 minutes. So now I got to figure out, is this something that can be translatable to be as efficient and effective? And usually the answer is yes. Just a matter of the training and development and making sure we're doing the thing that we said we were going to do.
Yeah, and I think that's so important that you bring that up, because it's a matter of, you know, watching what's going on. I mean, I've learned in working with some of my own, you know, virtual assistant teams with different companies, there's things to look out for, right? And it's important to especially early on, watch your team and measure and monitor what they're doing at a very deep level. And then as you expand, where I've made mistakes with some of these teams is I've, appointed like a team leader and expected them to train then the next person. But there's going to be a gap, no matter how much you don't wish that there's not going to be, and it'll collapse over time. The way they train it, then the way you trained them. So then if you don't pay attention, you kind of just think everything's running on autopilot. This is amazing. I've got all this new staff. They're doing what they need to be doing. Then you look back, it's like, but the numbers aren't correlating. And then it's like, well, I kind of lost the ball because that amazing training and everything that I did for that first group, I then passed the torch down, and like the flame was a little bit smaller, and they kind of passed it down, and it was like a little bit smaller, and it's like playing telephone, and things get lost through the chain, So
yeah,
I think it's important to stay involved.
And to bring back like Dan Martell in this conversation, I remember I was listening to his audiobook, and he said, when you have a process down, document it, video or otherwise, so that it's like crystallized. And if you really have your SOP dialed in and you have the training dialed in, then you record that, you give it to the person, and you see how it works out. Now you decide,
sure,
if they can effectively implement it, then great. If not, maybe we need to build a better training so that it is easily transferable. And then I remember Hormozy said, I think we talked about it.
Yeah, that's right.
Like he said, I master the process myself, then I document that process to a T. So if I hand you this process and you just do everything I say to do, it should be effective. If it's not, we need to either look at your effectiveness or the effectiveness of the process.
So in a previous company I worked with, we coined a term, right? I'm not sure, it could have came from another book or someone else. So if someone else out there has said this before, I apologize. I don't at this time know if it's been created or not. I like to think it's something that I helped create, but we call it the lowest common denominator. So we sat in the office the one day and we were looking at the org chart, and we basically said, okay, there's the C-level executive, the senior level, then the VPs, then the directors, and the managers, the team leaders, and then like the lowest level staff, right? And at that time, we were managing customer service department, the outbound sales department, and the retention departments, right? And I think there's one or two others in there. But we looked at the org chart and we were like, where's their gaps, right? And we saw, okay, the outbound team's great. We got team leaders, we got managers, we got this, right? The retention department's great. We got the team leaders, managers, this. Customer service, there's no team leader, there's no manager, there's no nothing. So we coined the term lowest common denominator. So it's like, okay, listen, you're not actually the senior vice president anymore. What? What do you mean? That's my title. I'm the senior vice president of this company. No. You're actually just a team leader. What? Well, that doesn't make any sense. What do you mean? Well, until you can go and sit in that department, do that team leader role, document it, bring someone else in to replace yourself, and then manage them, and then put them as a manager and fill that role, you're not technically the role that you are, right? And that was like the fun. Obviously, you are still the senior vice president, right? But we just had that whole concept, and I think it worked so well. I mean, we were able to always put ourselves in the weeds, get on the floor with the lowest level, that needed help, do the job yourself, document the job yourself, and we're able to then put people in place to take it over, So I haven't thought of that. Again, Dave, we need to talk more. I haven't thought of that one for such a long time, but
it's interesting as our founder sometimes tells the story, and I'm there. He'll say, David is like the chief cook, the bottle washer, the person who writes the menu, the person who serves the food. And as we started the business, I was doing from beginning to end of our entire process. And so there's such a value, I think as you rise in leadership, you're not going to be able to know every single detail of everything that's going in your organization, especially if there's all these different layers. But to be at the ground level where you learn everything inside and out, there's a real power in having that knowledge, so that when you are working with somebody higher in the organization or lower in the organization, you can say, I know, I understand what you're dealing with. I've been there, done that. And so you can, in some ways, empathize with where they're at. So you meet them where they're at, and then you can help guide to elevate as well. Yeah,
exactly. So that's incredible. Let's bring it back. So we're covering a lot here today, guys, but I think first and foremost, not just sourcing, anybody could go and source somebody from overseas and hope that they work out, but we're trying to talk about mastery and winning in a cloud-based world and an environment. We've touched on a couple things, having that reporting, preparing the proper training, spending the time. I think that the biggest risk but the biggest consideration in bringing on virtual staff, that I've seen is that people are afraid to sacrifice their time, right? So they think, oh, the easy way is I'll bring somebody in, like tell them what to do in like 2 hours and then like move on and like life is going to be great, right? But in reality, you have to invest into the people that you're bringing on, your team. You have to invest the time. And I think that's where a lot of people maybe either miss the boat completely because they don't do that, or they understand that they need to do that and they get overwhelmed and they say, well, this is actually a lot of work, so I'm just going to do nothing instead and I'm just going to be paralyzed, So you probably see this more than I do, Dave.
It creates a real challenging scenario for someone, whether it's the owner entrepreneur who's always done it themselves,
right,
who now has to learn the art of leadership, of delegation, of how to build a relationship and not just like an inspire and make sure that somebody's motivated to do the things, not only knows how to do the things. So that is in and of itself is a new skill set you might need to flex. And internally in organizations, if an organization is getting one of their leaders an assistant now, we've actually seen it sometimes opens up a vantage point into what is that leader actually doing,
right.
doing? And in some cases, for the company as a whole, it was a benefit. But for the individual, it became something where, oh, like that person's actually not doing as much as they thought they were doing.
Right.
So it led to greater efficiency in the organization. And that's what I often find too, is when you bring on a virtual staff or a virtual assistant or anybody on your team, you have to rise in your skill set in many ways. It also makes you a little bit more accountable when you have somebody underneath you that is reporting to you, that you have to give a daily, this is what I need you to do. In many ways, it makes you have to grow, but also more effective and efficient. And I mean, there's all kinds of growth and exponentiality that can come, but it's not always a walk in the park either.
It's going to be more work up front, 2 to 3x more work to bring somebody on than your day-to-day that you're used to now. But the payoff is at the end, hopefully it's going to mean more efficiency and not less work. The way I look at businesses, there's always more work. It's just it's the constant reallocation of resources, right? So it's like, okay, I've freed up time here, so I can double down over here and I can push more here. Right? I guess the wrong way to look at it would be is, oh yeah, I've got somebody doing this, so now like we can just like relax. Like I'm sure there's plenty of people who run businesses like that. That's not my mindset by any means, but there's that. And I think another thing that's important on this topic is nobody will ever do it as good as you. Okay, so that's another thing you need to swallow right now, or else you'll never be able to scale. Like, sure, nobody's going to be you. You're the best at your expertise and you're master of what you do. Nobody will ever match that. But if you can get somebody who's 70%, that then is 80%, that's then 90%, because they'll probably never get to the 100%, right? Let's just wipe that. I've been surprised, actually, so I can't say never. There's some people that far exceed expectations, but I think if you just know that they're only at best ever going to be 90% of your skill set, then you can't be let down. You know what you're working with, but then you can have 3 people that are at 90%, 4 people, and now you're building a business, right? So I think that's
one of my favorite quotes of late from that I often reference to Dan Martell. He says, 80% done is 100% awesome. And we like, what's the value of your, what's the value? Yeah, 80% done is 100% awesome. And he'll make the point, what's the real value of your time? Like, if you're valued at $400 an hour, let's just use that as like some lawyers charge, right? $400 an hour. If the admin that they do is not worth $400 an hour, then you should find someone who can do $20 an hour work so that you're not doing that kind of work, because it's not the best use of your time. And so that's where we continuously, I think, as leaders, business owners, and business operators, it's the cost benefit analysis. Is this the best use of my time? And if not, what is, and who can do the thing that's not the best time?
Sure. You know, and again, these are somewhat generalized statements, but I've seen too, when you work with people overseas, sometimes they're just so happy to have the opportunity that they just want to shine more so than somebody who's, you know, okay, this is, you know, not the high paying job that I wanted, and maybe it's a little redundant, and, you know, I think I'm worth more, and, you know, and all those things that you might run into. Again, generalized statement, not everybody's like that. There's great talent everywhere, you know, but I've seen in certain industries more so than others where that's the case, where, you know, you hire, you know, somebody local, you know, that doesn't show up, they're late, they don't take it seriously. And you've got somebody overseas that is in the same role, that's showing up every day, asking how they could be better, you know, just thankful, showing up with a smile, you know. So there's a lot of opportunity out there. And like I said, it's a global talent pool, you know, like you can really work with anyone in the world. It's 2025, you know. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the things that pulled on my heartstrings. Maybe it was a year and a half ago, somebody I had worked with previously, and she shared her story about her dream to open up her own virtual staffing agency from the Philippines. And I like to ask the question, I like to understand what's behind the person, and like, what's on your heart? Like, why is this the thing for you? And she said, well, I'm a single mom, and I'm really just trying to put food on my table.
Wow, yeah.
And there's a lot of other moms, single moms, married moms, but still their families are just looking to, you know, meet basic necessities sometimes. And that's one of the unexpected, incredible things.
Well, look at the opportunity, right? All you need is a computer and internet connection. You can work from your home in most cases, right? I know there's a lot of, you know, remote offices and whatnot, but you can, in some cases, work from your home with a laptop, a headset, and internet, you know, and be building your skills, be building, you know, helping build a business and being an integral part to a business, you know.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but I've heard from, like, not even needing to have it be my own assessment, other leaders' assessments, is there's like I asked the local pizza shop owner, I said, you know, how's your staff? And he's like, man, it's hard to find good talent who will show up consistently, be diligent, like, and it's actually a big challenge culturally. And they'll use the word entitlement, like people in the US sometimes feel entitled and they don't need to do this or that, or they can make up their own way that they're going to do work, versus if you found somebody who is like all in for you and your business, they're hungry, they want to learn, they want to grow. And it's like, if you have to choose between those two, it's, you know,
I mean, it's an easy choice. Yeah. So let's bring it all home. I think that if you've been tuning in, you know, we're talking a lot about generalized, you know, remote staff, you know, we're talking about systems, processes, procedures, you know, things to look forward to in terms of bringing people on. But I think, you know, to bring it all to a head, right, there's a huge opportunity right now to bring on talent globally, right, from anywhere in the world, Philippines, Egypt, Colombia, wherever it is, right? Mastering that is, you know, having the proper processes in place, the proper training, and investing the time, right, into these individuals and these amazing people to be a valued part of your team, and expecting to just bring them on and give them a 2-hour training and say go, probably not going to work, right? Even with that, you're going to want to have the proper systems to make sure you're efficient, so if you have somebody who's doing outbound, right, are they just manually dialing? Are they using a power dialer? Are they, using something that's going to amplify the time that they're spending doing that activity? And then are you tracking your KPIs? Obviously, clocking in and clocking out, that's one thing. Very difficult, actually, in a remote environment, right? Because anybody could just log into a screen and say, I'm here. And then when they're ready to clock out, say, I'm not here. So it's like, what are those activities throughout the day that they're doing? Is it number of calls? I'm using the call reference, right? Call center. But how many calls inbound, outbound? How many appointments did you set? How many sales did you make? How many leads did you generate? Having all that lined up and all those KPIs. And then I think really when it comes to this topic is doing something, trying it, right? It's very low exposure to try and, fill a role. Everybody's got a role that they need filled, right? So finding what that role is, what the, starting point's going to be for you, and just trying it, right? And there's no harm in bringing somebody on, and worst case, after 2 weeks, it doesn't work and you part as friends, and maybe you pause for a minute, or maybe you try again with somebody else, So what am I missing here, Dave? Anything that you feel is important for the audience, to understand when it comes to this?
I think one of the things that comes up often is, how does AI fit into all of this? And we had an equation, that I heard and I use now is, VAs plus AI equals ROI. So I think they still coexist. Like there's always going to be a need for someone who's a great virtual assistant, and it's starting to become like, hey, can you leverage AI in some way, and can they coexist together? And that usually amplifies the results. So that's we're getting that question a lot, and it's something that comes up often. Is like, how does AI fit into this equation?
Yeah, I think it fits in I'm a big advocate for AI. I think it's incredible. When it comes to certain things like, voice and, phone calls, like there's a lot to be said there. I don't know if it's fully there 100%, but I've seen some really cool stuff, in terms of that. And I'm the type of person, maybe I'm old school, I don't know, but if I know that I'm on the phone talking to an AI, depending on why I'm calling, like I'm just going to keep saying agent, zero, agent, and I'm going to want, a live body. But I've seen some cool technology where, if it's just as good, if not better and faster and more efficient, then it's probably an amazing, tool, right? I think to your point, Dave, too, is that when you've got some of this talent that you've sourced and they can use AI to brainstorm, to generate content, to, generate a list of, websites that they want to reach out to or research for a topic. I think that there's, I think if you're not leveraging AI at some level, then maybe you are falling a little bit behind in today's, environment. So,
yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think we really wanted to put this together, as a way to show some of for anyone who hasn't stepped into the virtual staffing world or into the virtual cloud-based world, like there is it's the whole world, right, of people out there that you could work with. A lot of them are very willing and very capable. And there are a lot of systems too that enable that remote work to be successful, right? CallTools is a phone system and a dialer. There's, Google Sheets, Google Docs, all the collaborative tools that exist, with the internet, it just opens up so many opportunities. And again, things that you might have thought that like, hey, I need somebody in the office doing this in front of me. Maybe not. Maybe there is the opportunity to open that up and have somebody remote that can help support you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was great, Chaz. I'm glad we reconnected. Two, we're having this conversation.
Oh, this is just the beginning. I think we're going to be doing a lot more. A lot more to come.
We just launched our Access 360 podcast. So I'll have to return.
I was going to ask, at the end here, what are you up to, Dave, that you want to leave the audience with, and how can everybody contact you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah. No, I'd be happy to connect with anybody who's interested in these topics or virtual staffing or either way. You can find us on accessvirtualstaffing.com, www.accessvirtualstaffing.com. David at accessvirtualstaffing.com is how you can reach out to me. And yeah.
And I'll tell you, this guy knows his stuff. If you really want somebody who's going to listen to you and really educated on, the staffing and everything, Dave is your guy. And again, I'm Chaz Tedesco, Chief Operating Officer here at CallTools. Very simple. You can see it at the bottom of the screen here, calltools.com. You can call me at 973-370-5711. That's my cell, so you can text me or call me there, 973-370-5711. And that's Chaz, C-H-A-Z as in zebra, not D. I don't want to be Chad. Chaz at calltools.com. And thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yeah, I also Chaz, not Chad, walked me through a CallTools demo and the functionality. It's highly worth looking into if this is your first foray into even hearing about it. But I would go through a demo and get the experience, because then you'll understand the capability of what they're doing. So it's good stuff.
Basically, if you're doing outbound calls on any level with any size team and you're doing it manually, we need to talk. Let's just keep it simple for this event. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you all, and see you guys on the next one.